slide around. You missed those lectures. Esteban, you're about to get another one right now, brother. You're in the middle of one. Oh, let me get my apron on. I feel naked without my apron, by the way. I've been cooking all this time. You haven't noticed? Not wearing my apron. Okay, it's almost chicken time, people. We're almost there. Simmer down, simmer down. Take another one of these, okay? It's the Quarantine Kitchen Happy Hour. You better believe it. Okay, get rid of that. I don't need this big old chef's knife for this job. I'm gonna go ahead and use the proper knife. I think I should demonstrate with a proper knife. Oh, got an itchy nose. As I do this, I'm gonna be putting my little parts of things that I can throw in a stock pot. I'm just gonna move them right into a stock pot, right? Like so, okay? So I got a stock pot right next to my cutting board here, okay? And you can see I got a little tray back here, and I'm gonna be laying parts out for that, okay? Once I get started, I'm not gonna be touching that camera much because I'm gonna be working with raw chicken, so I think this is about the angle we're gonna have for a little while now. Let me get the star of the show. I think I got it angled downward a little more, that's better. Let me get the star of the show and we'll get this party started. And there she is, okay? So you can see that I've got this chicken breast side up. You can see that big mound of meat on the surface there. When I flip this guy over, he's all flat and knobbly and everything. You know, it's like almost like shoulder blades running down here, these long flat bones here. You can just see that that is the back and that this is the front of the bird. And so that's gonna be kind of one common reference point. Also right now, the neck is towards you. If I flip them around, this is, you know, the other side where the back door is, okay? Usually right around this area, there's a ton of chicken fat right there. And that's kind of one of my pet peeves. I want to get that stuff out of the way so I can kind of demo and show my students what a chicken looks like, and also so they can see in there, right? So I usually want to kind of pick that fat out of the way. Also, excuse me, I'm getting a rough throat here. This is going to be tough. Also, I reach inside because a lot of times when we get chickens, there's going to be some gizzards and guts and things in there. Some of those gizzards, if I'm gonna make a stock or something, some of those gizzards are okay. Like you find the neck in there, and that's like meat and bone. That neck is really good for making stock. So you definitely wanna reach in there, see if you get a neck, because that's a good thing, right? Another thing that's good for your stock is a heart. A heart's basically, it's a muscle. It's a little chunk of meat. What are you gonna throw that in the garment or something? Or, you know, I wanna throw that in my stock pot, right? Now, if you get a liver in there, if you get a kidney, those aren't so common in there, but if you get those guys, those are filter organs, and those are gonna cloud up your stock, and it's gonna make it taste kind of metallic. You know how liver taste has that irony taste to it? So we wanna leave those filter organs out, but if you have those muscly organs or those pieces of neck or things like that, definitely in the stock pot. Those guys are your friend, okay? So you'll find all of those right up in that back alley right there, okay? So reach in there, make sure you don't leave any of that stuff in there, okay? Next, you got your legs kind of pointing towards you here. You've got some wings here. Now these guys have cut off the tips of the wings. Usually I have a little pointy part sticking off, that's the hand right there. And then this is kind of the forearm, and of course the shoulder type area right there. I don't know all the human names of this stuff. I'm a cook, right? Basically, we call this the drumette. If you guys are, you know, most of you guys go to Hooters, you know this stuff already, right? But so because you get your wings, right? But this is called the drumette right here. This bone right here, the forearm, just like our forearm, it's got a couple of bones in there instead of just one big one. That's what we call the flat, F-L-A-T, and then that little pointy part is what we call the wing tip, okay? So the drumette, the flat, and the wing tip, okay? So I usually go ahead, I start out with this chicken just taking the wings off if I'm working for myself at home. So I'm just gonna go ahead and take those wings off. There are chicken cuts that I do in culinary school where I'll leave them on and leave a little drumstick on there. If you've ever heard of an airline breast, that's a chicken breast with a drumette attached, okay? So there's your breast, one drumette. We're not gonna do that today. I'm gonna go ahead and remove these wings first, and then we're gonna start breaking this bird on down. Now, I mentioned earlier, I want to use a thin bladed knife, okay? I had that chef's knife earlier. Let me grab that again. I'm all chickeny. All right, I'm going to try not to touch anything but this. But here's my chicken knife, big and stiff blade, super wide, right? And a very different point to it, right? If I use this on my chicken, that point is gonna cut the blazes out of my knife. It's gonna be like a razor in your shoe, okay? I wanna use this knife that's built more like a scalpel, and I wanna use long, smooth strokes, just like they do on the Discovery Channel when you're watching surgery. You don't see them in there sawing at you, you know, when they're doing surgery. Long, smooth, measured strokes. That's what that butchery is all about. This knife's built like a scalpel, and that's how we use these guys. Most of the work on a butcher or boning knife's done on that first part right there, okay? And so, right now my chicken is breast side down. I'm gonna go ahead and remove these wings, and what I wanna do is I wanna get these wings off without cutting into that beautiful breast meat over on the other side. So when I do this, my knife's gonna go in, and then when I get kind of close to the other side, I wanna kind of turn my knife blade away from that breast and sweep away from it, okay? So I'm right-handed. I'm gonna be doing this backwards from the way I normally do it, but to be honest, I normally have to do my chickens backwards because all I do is chicken demos all the time. So I'm gonna get rid of that chicken fat. It went into my stock pot over here, and you're gonna see me putting my scrap in there. That fat is flavor, and I throw that in my stock pot too, and it'll render out, and at the end of this, I can harvest chicken fat from the surface of this that I can use in my kitchen for cooking. Ms. Teresa, she's all chickeny, or maybe I am. I think that's who's chickeny. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and kind of show you this little cut right here, okay? What I do when I start taking off this wing is you guys are looking at the back here, and I pull that wing kind of back like you're stretching your arm out in the morning, in the mornings when you're stretching, getting out of bed, and you can see that skin gets real tight there. That's where I'm gonna make my cut. And I'm just gonna, again, kind of a little nick there, and I just make one nick and I crack it a little bit, and it opens up a little more, and nature kind of shows you where to go, okay? And I'm just using the little tip of my blade, and right now I've exposed the joint right there. So I put my knife in that joint, and then like I was saying earlier, I wanna kind of, let me turn this around so you guys can see this. I wanna angle my knife so it's up and away from that breast meat. You see, I came back toward myself and I left all of that breast meat there, and I've still got a pretty healthy looking wing. If I had that wing tip on here still, I would kind of lock those guys together, and it would hold that guy tight and cook it really nice and even. I really don't like it when they take off my wing tips. I can use that stuff. That's my tip, okay? So don't let them take your tips, people. I'm gonna take off this other wing, okay? I get on these rants about these wing tips all the time. It's like, it gets me, okay? Okay, again, that chicken's back is toward me now. He's reclining in a comfortable position. I'm pulling that up, again, like you're putting your arms back behind your head in a hammock or something, and that armpit skin gets really, really taut right there. I'm gonna go ahead and make a tiny little cut, and then I'm gonna wrench on it a little, boop, and it opens up that joint there. And I'm gonna just set my knife in there and start working through it. Oh, I kind of got off track there. But if you get off track, lift up your knife, and it's like a 1/16 or a 32nd of an inch, one way or the other. Find that joint, and then again, I'm gonna kind of, let me turn this around so you guys can see. I'm almost cutting into my breast meat right there. I get to the other side, and I wanna swoop away from my breast meat and leave that breast meat intact, okay? There's my other wing. The wings are for appetizers, right? The breasts are for those fine dining plates. That's where my money is. So I got a couple of wings laying down. Now I'm gonna flip this bird over, and I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna do a little trick here. This is normally actually one of the first moves that I do. You see where the skin at the legs here, you see where it's taut right there? It's pulling tight right there. I make one little slash just in the skin. I'm not cutting into meat. I'll show you that. There's like seams in there. I'm not cutting the meat. And one little slash right there, okay? And when I open that up, the next thing I do, I'm like doing this towards you. Normally it would be the other way around. But I will crack one leg, and the joint just popped out right there. And then I crack the other leg, okay? It's a motion like this, crack, crack. crack, 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 okay? That pops those joints out, and that is gonna lay this bird flat, so it's kind of like, it lays it out like it's got a kickstand, and this bird's not gonna roll around on you anymore, okay? So this is kind of one of my first cuts. You know, I can get those wings off and everything, or I could leave them on attached to the breast if I wanted to later. There's different ways that we can go here, okay? But mainly the first thing, what you just saw, what you just saw right there, just a tiny little slash, just the skin, and then that crack, crack, and those guys are laying flat, and you got a kickstand, and now we're going after the breast meat, okay? So with the breast, let me turn this guy around. You can see this opening here. Since this is an anatomy class, I want to kind of show you this. This is where your wishbone is, and I sometimes I will take this out, but a lot of times at home I don't bother with it. But just since this is anatomy, I want to show you where the wishbone comes from, okay? Right there at this opening, it's like the collarbone. There's the neck right there, okay? It's kind of like we have those clavicles right here. That's what this reminds me of. And there, you can feel a ridge of bone right at the surface, and it's shaped like a pitchfork, okay? It's your wishbone. There's a little knob at the top of it right here. And so what I usually do is I'll take my blade and I'll just kind of cut in there right along that bone. I just kind of shave the meat off of one side, and then I get right on the other side of that thin little bone and shave it off on the other side, right? So I just made two little cuts right there on either side of that side of the wishbone, and I do the same thing over here. A lot of times I'm feeling in there. I call it digital surgery. I'm using my digits to find those bones, right? I'm not looking so much as I am feeling. And there's one cut. I'm on one side of the bone. I get on the other side. I don't know how well you can see that, but I just made two A-shaped cuts right on top of on either side of that bone. And now I'm gonna get in there. Again, digital surgery. I'm just feeling around. Squish, squish. You can feel it all squishing. Waka, waka, waka. And I'm just kind of working my way. I kind of separate the top or the bottom. There's the top. There goes the top, and it rolled right out perfectly. Oh, thank you. I always break those on my demos. So there's your wishbone right there. And now that that's not there, I can get these breasts off real cleanly. Usually that kind of interferes with getting a nice clean breast off. Usually, I'll be honest though, guys, when I'm in a restaurant or something like that, I'm not going after that guy. I'm gonna do a little waste and throw that extra meat I'm losing maybe in the stock pot or something. I get it as clean as I can get, okay? But I just wanted you to see where a wishbone comes from. It's right there at the neck opening, okay? By the way, he's going in the stock pot, but he gotta break it, okay? Who's gonna win, right or left? Oh gosh, right lost, lefty wins. Okay, so now that I've got that out of there, we are looking at two chicken breasts here that are separated by a hemisphere of a bone here that we call the keel bone. If you know what the bottom of a sailboat looks like, it's got the keel. Let me get back down here again. I like this. It's got the bottom on the keel of a sailboat, right? There's a bone that's sticking up just like a sail, basically. And we're going to cut on both sides of that bone and then roll those breasts right out. And I'm going to be using my boning knife to do long, smooth strokes and just shave it on out of there just like that. And then we'll do it off on the other side, shaving it on out, okay? So we're gonna take these breasts off. Check out what this keel bone looks like. We're gonna see it. What you do is you start by feeling that ridge of bone there, and I pick the right side. I'm going off on the right side here, and as I make this cut, I got that flexible knife. Remember I talked about that flexible knife? I'm gonna bend that knife almost as I'm making this cut to show you the pressure that I'm putting in this direction against that keel bone, okay? And I make a nice long smooth cut, and I just feel it. I'm gonna open that skin up there. And I just feel that thing, and that is opened up pretty much all the way in one cut, basically. And then I'm feeling that ridge of bone, just like when I started, and I get over on the other side of it, and now I'm following that. Now I'm pressing the bone in that direction, or I'm pressing the knife, right? I'm very twisted up right now because of the angle of the camera and everything. Okay, and so I've opened that all up, and what I've done right now, it looks kind of funky, right? It looks like an alien movie. I know, it's weird, it's funky, right? But this is what birds look like, people. We gotta know this stuff. It's survival now, okay? So when I open that up, these two big pieces of meat that are laying alongside that keel bone there, those are my chicken tenders, my little white meat chicken tenders, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and remove those guys. It doesn't take much. I start at the base of this guy. I got on the wrong side of that. bone there, but I start at the base and I just do little flicks with my knife blade, and this guy almost just rolls out. You see me just using a thumb here. And when this gets done, one thing to think about, there is a little tendon in there. You want to cut that tendon out perhaps. I'm laying it on down. I can't tell how well you can see that, but I'm kind of pulling that tendon out of there. And that's going in my stock pot. Tendons are excellent for stock. Kids love tendons. So I'm going to lay that chicken tenderloin down. I'm going to turn this bird around because I'm a righty, and I'm going in from the outside in towards the keel bone, and I'm just doing little slashes here and there, and that tenderloin is just almost falling out of there. Let me turn them around. Maybe you guys can see a little better. It just rolls out of there, okay? There's that tendon again. I'm not going to worry too much about it, but you see that little white tab in there. And so now you can see two ginormous chicken breasts. By the way, this was a 4.5 pound chicken. Your average chicken in a restaurant, when you get a half chicken, those are 3.5 pounders, okay? So this is an extra pound of weight here. Now, when I am taking off the chicken breast, what I like to do is pick up the chicken, and the gravity of the body is kind of rolling this away. It's like I have another hand that's kind of helping me pull it away, right? So I lift up the chicken, and I use my knife to do long, smooth strokes. I'm kind of attached up here. There we go. So long, smooth strokes, and I'm trying to get as much meat as possible off of that bone right there, okay? Once I'm through, you see that outline of that chicken breast right there? It's hanging by skin. So I'm just gonna cut through. Not worried about that, right? I get the other side, plenty of skin on there, and we'll trim these guys up in 1 second. I'm just gonna lay that aside and get this other breast off, and we'll get the legs off too. Then we gotta just hose this whole place down. Now I gotta start this a little bit, or this is gonna be an ugly little demo. Boop. Okay. So again, I like to hold that chicken so it's hanging, like it's up in the air, like a big old beef carcass on a hook, right? And I just shave it off of there, one side, and I can usually never get it as clean as the other side, right? But at this point, I can see the outline of that breast. You guys see what I'm talking about? It looks like a chicken breast, right? And then I just know it's hanging by a thread of skin. I'm just gonna cut the skin, and it's all good. Turn it around, and yeah, that's a reasonable chicken breast, you know, covered with the skin. I didn't tear it up too much. We're gonna trim those in a second. Let me get these legs off here. Let's see who's out there. Hey, Rachel, good to see you. And Carrie Ann, awesome. Okay, so right now I've got my two legs kind of pointed towards me. Earlier I popped those joints out, so you can kind of see those joints right there, okay? Now, what I don't want to do is I don't want to go from top to bottom, just straight down here, because there is a ton of meat on the backside here that I'm going to lose if I do that. So what I tend to do is I get its ass up in the air, okay? And I start up in this area, and I kind of feel for the bone right here, okay? That's the hip bone right there, and I'm holding onto a leg back here. And I kind of just put my tip of my knife right there where that pelvis is, and I go right to the other side. I just go from right to there, and I start working my way, not from top down, from butt to head, okay? So I'm kind of working my way forward. And as I do that, I want to try and pick up some meat back here. And right there is the most important part. I'm going to keep moving until I get to that joint that I popped open earlier. It looks kind of gross in there, but that's it, okay? And once I get to that joint, once I get right past it, I hold that chicken down with my knife and I pull that leg off. And it looks like it left about half of it in there. But the oyster is right there. Let me kind of hit that pocket there. There's a little pocket right there with a little meat, and I just kind of lost it a little bit. I'll get it on the other side. But there's half of my oyster right there. We want to try and pick that little chunk of meat up there. That is known as the tastiest little bite. When I was in culinary school doing all my student tasting of roast chicken or whatever, I was always stealing their oysters, okay? So let's do this again. I want to kind of point out again, I'm going from butt to head here, like the chicken is the T of my knife, right? Like it's a T. I'm going from butt to head, not from breast side down to the bottom. I'm going to cut off a bunch of meat that way. Let me open this up a little bit so you guys can see a little better. And again, I start out by feeling for the pelvis. It's right there, and I just move my knife to the other side and get on top of that meat. And I want to kind of watch the back here. It's kind of difficult to do, to pick up as much meat as you can. Once you get past that joint, that's where I popped that leg out earlier, you hold the chicken down with your knife and pull, okay? And that time the oyster came out perfectly clean right there. You got a nice clean pocket, and there is my oyster right there. That is the tasty little morsel you're trying to get. Main thing, if you can get the meat off of the carcass, you want to do it, okay? That's what that oyster thing is all about. Here's the carcass. I'm basically going to kind of break it down a little bit, maybe cut through it, just to let it fit in the pot a little bit better. Oh boy, I'm going to use my heavier knife. I think I'm done with that little one for a minute. And so, like I said, just so it can kind of fit in the pot, all these big pots. By the way, you can, out in the business, we call that the frame. You need some chicken bones, you got to order some frames. So now we're going to kind of cut these legs down a little bit. And so you've got your two legs with your two thighs here. And what I want to point out, let me kind of get this a little closer, is there is a line of fat right there telling you right where to cut. I think I will be better off with my chef's knife, actually. But if I get my knife, lay it right on that line of fat and cut, you might not hit it exactly. It's maybe 1 inch one way, or a 1/8 of an inch one way or another. But then once you hit that joint, it goes through right like butter, okay? Another thing I like to do, I like to take that little end piece off there, that little nub. And we did that in my first quarantine kitchen class, okay? So I'm just gonna pull that off and throw that in the stock pot. This is gonna cook down and just be a nice little clean bone once it cooks down. It's a French chicken leg, basically. And then my thigh, I'm gonna trim this stuff up real quick. There's some skin with some fat on it. I'm gonna go ahead and throw that in the pot. And then I got a nice clean chicken thigh over there. I could go ahead and clean this bone out using my other knife. I'm gonna go ahead and just cut along the bone. And then I kind of angle my knife, cut along the bone again. And I try and get my fingers back behind it at this point, and they are. I got them to meet through the meat. I got them to meet through the meat. That's what I'm trying to say. And now I'm going to go ahead and cut this little kneecap off. And then what I do is I just kind of shave the meat down to the bottom and cut it on out. And there's a boneless thigh, okay? That's going to go in my pot. And sometimes with these chicken thighs, I like to break them with my knife to expose the marrow for my stock pot. So there's a boneless thigh. I'm not going to bone out the other thigh, but I will separate it from the leg. So again, that line of fat is right there, if you can see that, okay? Right across there, and if I can find that joint perfectly, yeah, it went right to it that time. It just goes through like butter, okay? So let me trim this thigh, a little bit of extra skin. Make it nice like it's for a butcher case, okay? Even though it's for your house. Trim it up, get that skin kind of centered on there so it presents well, okay? There's a little bit of fat along the side of that thigh. Might as well trim that off too. A little nicer, okay? So I'm gonna lay that thigh on down. I'm gonna lop off this other knuckle here. Again, you want a heavy knife and you use the base of the knife. The tip's not gonna do anything, but that base is gonna go right through it, okay? That's going in the stock pot. All of this funk is going in the stock pot. I got a little weird skin there. Let's just get that off. Goodness. And I've got two Frenched chicken legs. Last thing I want to do is trim down these ginormous chicken breasts here, okay? So what I'm going to do first is kind of turn them over and see if there's any like sinew or anything. There's a tiny piece of sinew right there on the surface of that I'm going to remove. Whoops, boom. But otherwise, I don't see like skin or fat really hanging out here or anything. I just felt a piece of bone. I'm going to get that. I'm just going to trim that right there. Boom. And now let me get this guy turned around. And we're going to look at the skin on this side. There's a little line of fat right there. I'm going to get that. I'm not worried too much about fat, personally. I like the fat. I will say that there is often a bunch of fat at the front here, though, in this heavy area that I like to get off. And there's a trimmed up chicken breast for you, an enormous one. We're going to be grilling that off in just a sec. And here is my other chicken breast. Again, I got kind of a line of fat over here I want to remove. All of this scrap and fat and little chud here is going in the pot. I'm gonna flip that guy over, trim any skin that doesn't fit into my worldview. Okay, and again, in this heavy part up here, there's a bunch of fat up there. That's kind of my pet peeve right there. So I just trimmed all of that skin with that heavy fat off. You don't want to over trim the skin though, because as this chicken breast cooks, that is going to be basting that chicken breast. And that skin, if you do it right, that skin is like chicken bacon on the outside. We were talking about that in another class. Let me clean up just slightly. I'm going to show you this tray full of chicken, and then we're going to clean up all the way. Cha-cha-cha. This is when we need the band. See who's out there. Hey, Nathan Garcia, good to see you, brother. Mr. Daniel, awesome. Welcome, welcome. We're just in a transitional phase here, folks. Getting ready to start throwing down a chicken stock. We just broke down a chicken here. Everybody's wildly happy. The craziest quarantine kitchen show they've ever seen. This is really nasty. It's got to go. I may as well take care of all of this business here. Oh, man. You wouldn't believe what it looks like backstage over here. Oh, it's bad. That's to be expected. That's what it's like around here. Quarantine kitchen happy hour. It's like backstage at the Greek. Oh, yes. Who's there? Hey, Teresa. You have great tech. Ah, you're just so sweet. Ha! She's so sweet. Isn't she lovely? She is a bad mamma jamma, though. If you guys don't know Teresa Rakovsky out there at American River College, a legend. I should say, Teresa, you'll appreciate this. Another legend from American River College, Ms. Roxanne O'Brien, hooked me up with some red corn grits the other day, and I'm going to be working those into the next quarantine kitchen happy hour. You better believe. I'm pretty excited about that. Let me do just one little sanitation wipe here, guys, and we're back to it. Sorry about the interruption here. Got the antibacterial biz. Oh, yes. Because there was some chicken flying, if you don't mind me saying. This is where we cue that turkey in the straw music. Oh yeah. Back in school, I would totally have that going on Chicken Day. On Sausage Day, I had Oktoberfest music playing. Some of my students remember this stuff. You better believe. Oompa music for Sausage Day. It was awesome. All right. Hey, we might be getting into a sausage class in this darn kitchen before it's over. Christy, good to see you out there. Whoop, whoop. Okay, I'm almost there, people. We're almost there. Let's take a look at that chicken that we got, okay? Here she is. Now, I've got 2 wings. Those wings are just drumettes and flats. They're missing their tips, the third part, okay? Above those 2 wings, I've got, let me do this, right? I've got a couple of chicken tenders here. Those are those little white meat chicken tenders you're always hearing about, okay? Those are sitting right there. I took one of those little tendons out of there, but the other tendon is there. You can probably still see that, okay? I have 2 ginormous, juicy looking breasts right there. I will say breasts are not my favorite, though. I'm much more of a dark thigh person. I'm always about the thigh, but I think it's really important to buy the whole chicken and be able to utilize it, right? Finally, after those thighs, we've got those legs. When I talk about utilizing that chicken, check this out. I got my stock pot right here, and I threw in the chicken frame. I broke it down a little bit so it fits in there. I see Art is out there. Good to see you, brother. Good to see you, a former student, right? I've got the breast section in there, and all of the skin and all of the fat and all of that stuff. It's all going to render and give me flavor, okay? Anything that has flavor is going into my stock pot. Let me put this chicken aside and let's start talking about stocks. Boop. Stock making is kind of the next stage of the game here, okay? Now that we broke down that chicken, we want to get our money's worth out of it. And I just started to kind of talk about, oh, Teresa, talking about the darkening. I just started trying to talk about just that idea of utilizing a whole chicken, being able to buy a whole chicken. It's just insane how we have set up our food system to sell nothing but a packet of wings or a packet of thighs or a packet of parts of this or a packet of parts of that. And when did we stop just knowing what to do with a whole chicken, a whole bird? You think about our evolution over tens of eons, however long it is, however long you might want to say it is, okay? But being able to figure out how to eat a bird has been a big part of it, you know? So very, very important stuff to know, and I really wish we could get back to knowing things like just how to roast off a chicken like we did in our first quarantine kitchen, right? Or how to break down a chicken so you can grill it or saute it or do something else with it. I can cook this meat off and and just dice it up and use this whole thing to make a soup, right? And so there's just so many ways that you can go with this. I'm gonna be eating this chicken for probably 3, maybe 4 days by the time I make a soup and a couple of dinners out of the meat and so forth, right? And so important to kind of know this stuff, okay?